All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It's been a few weeks since we've had a proper Dino class. About 2 weeks ago, we had our in VR classes that people were able to attend. I did a very short, like 40-minute Dino class that I don't think ended up getting put on I don't think ended up getting put on YouTube. And then last week we had a cancel class for reasons I'll probably get into later in stream. But it has been a very busy few weeks in the field of paleontology. So how are we doing today? Hello, hello. Welcome in. I have a question: who would win, Spinosaurus or Tyrannosaurus? Tyrannosaurus. It's not really like a debatable question. It's just objectively, it's going to T-Rex. But hello, Gold Titan. Hello, Mickey. Lakota, which dinosaur model are you using? This is Oviraptor. This is Oviraptor from Prehistoric Kingdom. I really like the Oviraptor model they have going. Unfortunately, the lighting in this world does not do this model justice. So I do appear to be very bright. So we're going to stick with this skin for now because I think it's less noticeable on this one. But yeah. How do you feel about the new mummified Edmontosaurus that got discovered? I'm so happy you asked that question because if you didn't hear, I need to explain this because I know the guy that found it. I know this guy. Okay, so there is a brand new Edmontosaurus mummy that they just found in Hell Creek, right? It's not one of the mummies that was described in the newest paper that showed off the Edmontosaurus sail and like the hooves on its back feet. It's a brand new one that has not been described yet and probably won't get described for another 4 to 5 years. Here's the thing. I know the guy that found it. His name is Adam. I forget his last name, but I know him because I went on a dig with him back in 2018. The whole reason I remember his name, because I'm usually horrible with people's names, is that everyone there, like the people around my age, because I was a lot younger then, we had a running bit that like every time we saw him, we would quote the one vine of the guy going, Adam. So I know that guy. I got to dig with him in 2018, like ages ago. And it's so cool seeing him in the news about like the new mummy. That's just awesome. I love that. But yeah. Have you ever considered content creation? I mean, that's what I'm doing right here, right? I mean, technically, like I am technically doing content creation here. I upload all of these streams to YouTube. I'm actually taking YouTube seriously now. Like I'm actually putting thumbnails on videos now instead of letting it just auto generate. So yeah, it's been a wild few weeks, man. Dinosaur Man, what's the most misunderstood thing about dinosaurs? There's a lot of things that I think people misunderstand about them, but I also think that a lot of common misunderstandings about dinosaurs have kind of been settled. The one thing that I think a lot of people misunderstand is that when we say that birds are dinosaurs, that does not go the other way around. Birds are dinosaurs, but dinosaurs are not birds. Right? Birds are a subset of dinosaurs, but dinosaurs are like their own thing, right? Now, birds are dinosaurs, but dinosaurs are not birds. Right? Birds are dinosaurs, dinosaurs are not birds. It's not reversible. So yeah. Could Shunosaurus maybe some sort of hybrid animal in some way? I don't think so. And thank you everyone who's gifting, by the way. I appreciate you so very much. Thank you so much. I just like to keep the ball rolling, so sorry if I don't say your names. But I don't think I've heard anything about Shunosaurus, and plus I don't think there were, like, if you're implying that Shunosaurus is like some chimeric specimen of like an ankylosaurian of some kind with a sauropod, I doubt it. I genuinely think, because like here's the thing, we have other sauropods that have club tails. I think didn't I heard something about Mamenchosaurus probably having one. Oh yeah, by the way, there's a new species of Mamenchosaurus that was described like last week. Um, so yeah, I don't think Shuno's like a chimeric thing of anything. But yeah, do you think Edmonto could take down a Rex? Yes. It is possible that Edmontosaurus got up to like um 20 tons in some instances. Now obviously you're not going to find a lot of these specimens that are going to be around that size range, even though Edmonto is like very common to find. But there are some specimens of Edmontosaurus that are genuinely staggering how big they are. I think honestly, because like everyone always sees T-Rex as this unstoppable apex predator, right? And that's just simply like, yeah, it is an apex predator. It is the top animal of its ecosystem, but it is not unstoppable. What I think a lot of people need to realize is that T-Rex was the way that it was because it was having to deal with the other animals in its environment. It's dealing with a hadrosaur that is twice the size of elephants, and like modern elephants in some cases. It's dealing with ceratopsids that are around the same size range and have like these 5 to 6 foot long horns on its face. So it's just dealing with a lot of stuff out there. But yeah, very easily in some instances, I would definitely say that Montosaurus would put like it would definitely give T-Rex a run for its money. But yeah, opinion on the Jurassic World depiction of the Spinosaurus compared to the new fossils. I will say that it was good for the time, did not stand the test of time, but is a pretty cool design otherwise. Do I prefer the accurate models? Yes. That is because I'm mostly a paleontology fan before I am a Jurassic fan. That is not to say I hate it. I think it's a cool design. Is it overhyped? Maybe a little bit, but I will always, like, subjectively, paleo accurate designs will always be my favorite. What is the apex predator of the planet? Well, pretty consistently for at least the last couple 100,000 years, it has been us. I don't think there has been a predator quite like Homo sapiens that has dominated the entire globe as effectively as we have. And it has been absolutely detrimental to the planet, to be fair. I don't think there has been a single species other than us that has completely changed the biosphere of the planet as rapidly as we have. We have other animals will enter new environments and change themselves to better fit those environments. That's adaptation, survival of the fittest, selective breeding, stuff like that. Eventually, the animal itself will change to fit its environment. We change the environment to fit us. That is the main difference. Now, if you want to go back in time, you would have specific families that would be like the top apex predators of the planet. But I don't think you would have one single, like, species, let alone, I don't even think you'd have, like, one single genus that would be, like, considered the apex predator of the planet. So, yeah. Majungasaurus. Majungasaurus is super cool. So if you don't know about Majungasaurus, Majungasaurus is a belosaurid from Madagascar around the end of the Cretaceous. These guys, I like to call them sausages on legs because they have really stubby legs and they have really big barrel-shaped bodies. Now, abelisaurs are known for several different things. One of those things being their very stubby heads. They have very short heads, not like laterally short, but just like they're not as long, right? They have they're I don't mean say this to sound mean, but abelisaurs are kind of like the pugs of the theropod group. They have very short snouts. The other thing they're known for is their smaller arms. Belosaurids have absurdly small arms. When you look at things like T-Rex and you're like, wow, that guy has really small arms. And it's nothing compared to the Abelosaurids. The Abelosaurids completely lack elbows, to be fair, as well. But Majungasaurus itself is really interesting because it's a member of the Abelosaurid family that has been affected by something called insular dwarfism or island dwarfism. This is what happens when an animal is ends up stranded on an island, or a population of a certain animal ends up stranded on an island, and that animal rapidly gets smaller because now they have less resources, and the way that you conserve less resources is by making yourself smaller. And if you make yourself smaller, then you can use up less of the resources but get more energy out of it. The other animals that Majungasaurus would have been coexisting with on Madagascar would have been things like Mashikasaurus, Mashikasaurus, Simosuchus, Beelzebufo as well. Super cool guy. Also, one of the only Abelisaurids, if not one of the only dinosaurs that we have like express evidence of cannibalization in. That's not to say cannibalization didn't happen with other animals. It was just something that we have found with Majungasaurus specifically. Give me some information on how to become a paleontologist. Right. So, what I will tell you is that not a lot of places are going to give you a specialized degree in paleontology. Now, you can usually go two routes with paleontology. You can take the geology route or the zoology route. Now, when I was originally going for it, I went with the geology route because I've thought, like, oh, my mom teaches geology. Maybe I'd be pretty good at it. And then I realized, hey, I'm actually way better at the zoology part of this than that. Now, unfortunately, I didn't get to finish my schooling for it because of some stuff that happened with my family. But, that's not something I'm going to really talk about. But you can go one of those two routes. I would recommend, if you want to do like a lot of field work, maybe just going for stuff in geology. Specialized degrees in paleontology, I will tell you, aren't going to get you extremely far because not a lot of people are looking for people with degrees in paleontology. I will say the paleontology as an industry is getting a little bit more popular and talked about a lot more often, which is awesome. Hey, but then again, maybe I'm just in an echo chamber and only hearing about like the cool stuff with paleontology because, I follow it all. But I'd say like look for a place that maybe has a specialized degree in paleontology, and if not, go and do something with zoology or geology, I would say. I think there's someone here on TikTok. I can like repost one of their videos after class here. And then I think they give like a full guide on like how you can like get into all of it. So I'll be on the lookout for that and maybe repost that after class as well. So yeah. If a ceratopsid lost its horn, could it grow back? No. And I'll tell you why. Let me ask you something. If I chopped off your finger, would it come back? No? Okay, that's because it's bone. And that's the same rule with Triceratopses. Now, yes, there are reptiles that can regrow bones and stuff like that. A lot of lizards today can regrow their tails and they have bones in them. Here's the thing. Dinosaurs aren't lizards. Cutting off like a dinosaur's horn and expecting it to grow back because they are reptiles and other reptiles can regrow stuff like that is kind of like, again, cutting off someone's finger and saying, well, you shared an ancestor with this reptile like a few 100 million years ago, maybe you should be able to regrow it. Just doesn't happen. So yeah, and also additionally, unlike modern animals like deer, elk, moose, and stuff like that, those guys, they all lose their horns seasonally, right? That's because antlers aren't really bone. They are meant to shed off, right? I think that, yeah. So those come off, but like if you look at the skull of a Triceratops, there's like no difference between one part of the skull to the horn. It's just smooth. Now, it could have been, layered in keratin and stuff like that. But that probably wouldn't shed off either. So yeah. Awesome fact about Eutyrannus. In addition to being the largest animal with confirmed evidence of plumage, it is also remarkably well preserved in other aspects as well. Now, I have been somewhat off in how I have described the 3 specimens of Eutyrannus in the past, so I'll use this opportunity to slightly correct myself. There are 3 specimens of Eutyrannus. There is an adult specimen, and there are 2 younger specimens. Now, I have accidentally, incorrectly said that these 3 specimens were found together. That is not true. The big specimen, the adult, that one was found by itself. The other 2 were found with each other. Now, this also gives us the opportunity to look at how Eutyrannus changed as it got older. What we find is that, well, surprisingly, they don't change a whole lot. I think their skulls might get a little bit longer, but otherwise, I think their arms are mostly what changes the most. But Eutyrannus itself is a Proceratosaurid. It is a member of the Proceratosauridae family. It is actually the second largest of its family. Now, if you don't know what Proceratosauridae are, it's kind of like a precursor to the later Tyrannosaurs. It's a more ancient branch of the superfamily known as the Tyrannosauroididae. And in general, they're really cool. Unfortunately, I think the last of the Proceratosauridae, they're, by and large, they're mostly gone by the time the end of the early Cretaceous. And they're kind of just succeeded by the Tyrannosauroids. Or the Tyrannosauridae, the true Tyrannosaurs, stuff like T-Rex and stuff like that. Also, I don't think Eutyrannus... I think I was looking into this as well because I really want to remake my old Eutyrannus video. It probably didn't live in as cold of an environment as we originally thought it did, because it was probably just in and around a lot of like temperate areas. It probably got cold, but it probably wasn't like very cold. But yeah, pretty interesting animal so far. So for example, this Triceratops lost a horn. It would hurt like hell, almost like losing a limb. Probably, yeah. I mean, we have, unless I have completely misunderstood, I'm fairly certain we have, like, nerves and stuff in and around our bones. So, yeah, most definitely that would hurt. So, yeah, that would very much hurt the animal. I think there is a Triceratops somewhere that had lost its horn, or at least one of its horns, before it was fossilized. At some point in life, it lost its horn. Now, what could have done that? Plenty of things. It could have, I don't know, charged at something, got its horn stuck in like a rock wall and like it got snapped off. It could have gotten its horn snapped off by a T-Rex. It could have gotten its horn broken by a rival, and just over time that break in the horn fractured more and more and more, and then it just kind of fell off one day. So, yeah. What's the purpose of the bump on your nose? Oh, well, Oviraptor here probably didn't have too much of a utility purpose for it, but then again, Oviraptor is about this big. This is about as big as Oviraptor gets. So, more than likely, with an animal like this, the bump, or the crest, would probably be more for display. And I know, that's like, I don't know why that happened. Sorry, I had a technical error. But it is one of the 7 deadly sins of paleontology to say that anything is a display structure, but unfortunately, that's the answer I'm going to give you because, well, it's probably a display structure. There's been a lot of debate over, like, how big the crest would have been, because when you're looking at, like, just the skull, you see this bump. Now, some people have reconstructed it as a very big crest. Other people have reconstructed it very conservatively to align more closely to the skull. This kind of takes a bit more of like a middle ground route. It's a bit more prominent, but it's not as small as it is in the skull, I believe. Then again, it's been a hot minute since I've seen Oviraptor's skull, so I might be a little wrong with that. Maybe this is super conservative, but because it has been a hot minute. Also, speaking of Oviraptorids, there is a Oviraptor from Hell Creek that has not been described yet, and unfortunately, I think the only specimen of it got sold at auction last week. as of now, I don't think we know who has it. We have no idea who has this Oviraptorid, and it's really unfortunate. I'm not like a huge fan of okay, auction off specimens of Triceratops or Edmontosaurus. We have dozens of them. We have so many specimens of Edmontosaurus and Triceratops that sometimes, and this is a thing, especially with Triceratops, sometimes you'll find something in the field that yeah, this is probably like a whole skeleton under there. And they just won't dig it out. That's how many skeletons of Triceratops we have. So auction those off. But when it comes to new stuff that isn't described, give it to a museum, man. I hate it. I hate private auctioneers. I hate people who collect stuff like this. It's just a complete detriment to the field of science. It's, no. Talk about Parasaurolophus. I did see that right before it went off. But yeah, so this actually gives me the opportunity to talk about something else as well. I like to talk a little bit about hadrosaurs as a whole, and give me 1 second to find my Parasaurolophus avatar, because I do have one. Here it is. Okay, so if you've seen the news, and you also saw my 2025 Paleo Wrapped, you probably heard something about hadrosaur crests. And Parasaurolophus probably has one of the largest and most prominent crests out of any hadrosaur that has ever been described. Here is what was uncovered a few weeks ago. So another paper came out about a specimen of Edmontosaurus that is neither of the two species that we currently have recognized. And in that paper, they found that there is they found that there is no correlation between keratin placement and crests. And they use this to say that more than likely, instead of this harder outer shell for the crest that you see on them now, they probably had skin covering their crests. Much like chickens do. So you're probably going to see a lot of reconstructions that have fleshy crests in the future. And that's very cursed to think about. So yeah, it's very strange. Do Dakota Raptor exist? That's kind of up in the air in the moment because we're not sure. There was a paper that was coming out about Hell Creek that I thought was going to be either the paper that validates or finally invalidates Dakota Raptor, but it was not. It appears that paper was on freshwater mosasaurs, which, hey, still really cool. But as far as Dakota Raptor goes, jury's still out on that. We're not entirely sure. We know that there's something big in Hell Creek that had quill nodules, but other than that, that's kind of where that road ends. So we will see. What is your least favorite Jurassic World design? My favorite Jurassic World design, if we're just counting the shows and movies, has to be probably the Carnotaurus. There's a lot of things wrong with the Carnotaurus design, but overall, I would say it is probably the most paleo accurate. My least favorite design in the Jurassic franchise has to go to Baryonyx because I don't know where to start with that one. The head's too blocky. Why does it look like that? It's a bipedal alligator with shrunken forearms. That is just not Baryonyx, and the fact that they're trying to pass it off as Baryonyx is just kind of embarrassing. I will say, I understand why the animals in Jurassic World look like that. Not like lore reasons, but I'll tell you why. I don't know if this is confirmed, but I'll tell you my hypothesis. If they did 1-to-1 accurate dinosaurs in the Jurassic franchise, right? They could not copyright or trademark that design because functionally that would be kind of like copyrighting the design of a panda. You can't do that because that's an animal. And if it is an animal, then it can technically be used by anything as a design. But if you make it look unique and different from the animal it's supposed to represent, then you can, because you have put your own spin on it. So that's probably why the designs are never going to be quite so accurate. So yeah. Talk about whether Spinosaurus was aquatic. There's a lot of different ideas on how aquatic Spinosaurus is. I know that Nazar Ibrahim, the guy who is responsible for the 2014 and the 2020 paper on Spinosaurus, which revealed the hind limbs and the paddle tail, he is very adamant in the near full aquatic lifestyle of Spinosaurus. However, there are a lot of people who don't think that is accurate because there's a lot going against that idea. First and foremost is bone density. Spinosaurus has an absurd amount of density when it comes to its bones. Like, most dinosaurs have hollow bone structures. That's why certain dinosaurs were able to get as big as they were, because they didn't have the same kind of dense bones that, like, mammals do, right? And because of that, they weighed a lot less than they should have. But Spinosaurus has stupidly dense bones. Now, the thing is, that's a pretty common adaptation with aquatic animals. God, there's like hair in my mouth. Sorry. That's a pretty common adaptation with aquatic animals. You see that kind of adaptation with hippopotamus and penguins and stuff like that. But when you look at hippos, right? And hippos don't swim. Hippos walk on the bottom of the water. That's how dense they are. Now, yeah, hippos can jump up, grab air, but they will sink. So it's more than likely that Spinosaurus probably would have sunk, right? And probably would have stayed in the water similar to hippos. Probably would have stayed at like the bottom of a river and stuff like that. Now, there's also a lot of other things about Spinosaurus' anatomy that would also suggest that it's not as aquatic as, like, say, 2025's Walking with Dinosaurs would suggest. For one, that tail is not built for swimming, right? Okay, let me show you what I mean with that. Where's my Spinosaurus? I'll show you. There's my Spinosaurus. Here we are. Okay, let's take a look at Spinosaurus real quick. All right. This is Spinosaurus's tail, right? Spinosaurus has a really long, almost kind of parallel look to its tail, right? The proportions stay roughly the same throughout most of the tail structure, right? You notice that? Here's the thing. If the tail's meant for swimming, it shouldn't look like that. There should be a noticeable tail fluke. However, what Spinosaurus's tail does resemble is that of, what are they called? Basilisk lizards? Basilisk lizards have a very similar kind of structure to their tail. Do you know what their tails are used for? Display. They don't swim. The other part is that Spinosaurus seemingly has pressure sensors on the tip of its snout. And you'll also notice that its nostrils are really far up its face, meaning it's probably sticking its nose into water like this. It's sticking its snout in, and it doesn't have to put its nostrils in, and it's waiting for a fish to come by so it can snap it, right? So I think Spinosaurus is a shoreline, like, water-wading predator. It's probably not an underwater pursuit predator. So, yeah. Dryptosaurus facts. Ooh. Okay, Dryptosaurus is really interesting because it is something known as a Eutyrannosaurian. Eutyrannosaurians are not quite Proceratosaurids, and they're not quite Tyrannosauridae. Now, Dryptosaurus itself actually used to be named something else. And even if you don't know the name Dryptosaurus, you have definitely seen it. Dryptosaurus used to be named Laelaps. And one of the most iconic pieces of paleo art ever produced was a piece called Leaping Laelaps. Look up Leaping Laelaps because you have definitely seen that art piece somewhere. Now, Dryptosaurus is also representative of a kind of it's representative of a place and time that we don't get to see very often, and that is Appalachia in North America. Now, North America during the late Cretaceous, around the time that Dryptosaurus was around, was split into two. You had Laramidia to the west, Appalachia to the east. The thing is, Laramidia preserved a lot of its contents. You had all of the big tyrannosaurs over there and stuff like that. We got to see all of that. Appalachia, however, does not preserve very well. We have a handful of ornithischians over there, and maybe a few theropods. But the major theropods that we have over there are Dryptosaurus and Appalachiosaurus, both of which are Eutyrannosaurids. At least I think that's the consensus on Appalachiosaurus. So Dryptosaurus is just overall a really fascinating animal, simply because it represents something we don't get to see very often. It also had a lot more of a long-lasting impact on paleo media that I don't think a lot of people realize. So otherwise, very cool animal. Just wish we knew more about it, honestly. Very cool either way. Can you talk about the Jormungandr mosasaur of North Dakota? I don't know too much about that. I remember someone mentioned that to me in my Discord. By the way, community Discord, link in bio. We have a whole channel where you can ask me questions. I don't remember too much about the Jormungandr. I remember something about the teeth. Oh no, it's a species. Yeah, okay. So it's a new genus of mosasaurid, I believe. When was it described? It was described in 2023. Very cool. Jormungandr Walhall and Anensis. I'm probably not saying that name right. But yeah, very cool. Lived about 80 million years ago, of the Campanian. Cool. So it actually predates T-Rex, because T-Rex shows up 68 million years ago in the Maastrichtian, whereas this guy was swimming around 80 million years ago in the Campanian. Very fascinating. But yeah, Yichi facts for today. Yichi's got to be one of my favorites. Of course, we did a collaboration with BioBuild Studios. We made a Yichi build set. So, hey, go check that out if you want to. Yichi's very interesting because I was talking with someone in the Discord today about how we know pterosaurs had wing membranes instead of bird-like wings with feathers. And it comes down to skeletal anatomy. And while we were discussing it, I realized that, so modern birds, whatever's left of their digits sits at the end of their fingers. Whereas with pterosaurs, half of their arm is a single finger. And the rest of their fingers are situated in the middle of their wings, right? So when they land, they fold their wings up because they're walking on their hands. With Yichi, what's interesting is that that's a level of convergent evolution, right? Because Yichi has wing membranes, unlike other Yichi wasn't a bird, it's a bird-like dinosaur, but unlike birds, Yichi had that same hyper-extended finger that went all the way to the tip of the wing because it was the tip of the wing. And I think that's so fascinating. It's such a cool example of convergent evolution, and I love that. But yeah, talk about Torvosaurus. Torvosaurus is super cool. So there's two species of it. There's Tanneri, which is found in North America, and there is Guernii, which is found in Europe. It would have been in and around the late Jurassic. It would have competed with with some theropods like Allosaurus, Ceratosaurus, stuff like that. The North American one was slightly smaller than the European one, but what is known is that Torvosaurus in North America was kind of being, I don't want to say pushed around, but it definitely wasn't as dominant and as large as the North American allosaurs, whereas in Europe, the European allosaurs were a little smaller and the Torvosaurus was a little bigger. So you have kind of like this role reversal depending on which continent you're on, which is really fascinating. Another thing is that Torvosaurus is one of the most well-known and well-completed megalosaurids that we have. Now, unfortunately, Megalosaurus, namesake of the family and also first dinosaur ever described, doesn't have great material. So most of the time these days, when you see like reconstructions of Megalosaurus, a lot of that's actually based on Torvo. That's using like a process that's called phylogenetic bracketing, which you're inferring the missing pieces of certain specimens with other animals that are thought to be closely related. That does have flaws. Sometimes there are things that we're just missing completely. But most of the time, it gets the job done until something is found. So, yeah, super cool animal. Talk about Albertosaurus. Albertosaurus is super cool. It is one of two members of something called the Albertosaurinae. The Albertosaurinae is a subgroup within the Tyrannosauridae family. They are characterized by being a lot more slim and having leaner proportions. They're sometimes called the sports cars of the Tyrannosaurs. Albertosaurus, I think, shares that with only Gorgosaurus at the moment. Now, the thing about Albertosaurus and Gorgosaurus is that those two morphologically are very similar to each other. There's some people who think, hey, I think these guys are like the same thing. There are other people who dispute that because they do have morphological differences between each other, and they did live at different times, I believe. But Albertosaurus, of course, lived in Canada and was in and around the late Cretaceous. It would have coexisted with a lot of different ceratopsids, like a lot more than usual. One of them, I believe, was Pachyrhinosaurus that would have, or would know. Pachyrhinosaurus was later, wasn't it? God, off the top of my head, I can't really think of any of the ceratopsids that it would have lived with. But yeah, otherwise, really cool animal. I really like the reconstructions of it that give it like the sharp lacrimal crest. But yeah, super cool animal. Fun facts about Ankylosaurus. It's my favorite dino, please. Ankylosaurus is super cool. The Thyreophorans in general are really fascinating. So if you didn't know, Ankylosaurus is a part of a group called the Thyreophorans. And the Thyreophorans include the ankylosaurs and the stegosaurs, right? The two animals with back-plated armor and tail weaponry happen to be related. Crazy, wild, right? Now, the stegosaurs, those guys dominate the Jurassic, but by the time the Cretaceous rolls around, you have the ankylosaurs that predominantly get more and more popular. They show up more often. The early Cretaceous comes around. You have things like Gastonia. Late Cretaceous rolls around and you got tons of them, including like nodosaurs. You've got like Tarchia, Sicania, Ankylosaurus itself, Zool. You've got Denversaurus. I know it's like a nodosaurid, but all that. And then Boreapelta, Sauropelta, all of those guys. Now, with Ankylosaurus itself, one thing that I've always really liked about it is that there's a lot of different ways that you can interpret it. There's a lot of different ways that you can say, hey, maybe the osteoderms, which are like the bony plates on its back, maybe they were situated in this way or that way or this way. So it's a very like up to you kind of thing on how you want to reconstruct that. There might be like a consensus on those patterns. I'm not exactly sure as of right now, but there might be. But even if there is, there's also the idea that these osteoderms might have been covered in keratin, which means they have the opportunity of conforming straight to the osteoderms themselves, or maybe the outward appearance was a bit taller, maybe it was sharper, maybe it was blunter, and that kind of gives you like a ton of room to kind of be as creative as you want with it when it comes to like making art pieces and reconstructing it for yourself. Other things is that there is like this popular saying that Ankylosaurus is one of the few dinosaurs that we don't have like bite marks on from like T-Rex. And while that is true, we do have evidence of ankylosaurids being targeted by tyrannosaurids. So Ankylosaurus, while being a walking tank, probably was not indestructible. So careful when you go around saying stuff like that. But yeah, I want to see some facts about Mamenchisaurus. Mamenchisaurus recently, you probably timed that really well. And let me just make sure that, yeah, here we go. Yeah, so Mamenchisaurus actually just got a new species. So if you don't know, Mamenchisaurus has the longest neck of any sauropod that we have. It has a stupidly, freakishly long neck. It's super cool. Don't get me wrong. I'm not calling it like a freak as an insult. It's just really fascinating. And if you've seen Jurassic Park: The Lost World, then you have seen Mamenchisaurus, because the sauropods on like the game trail scene, those are Mamenchisaurus. Now there are, wow, Mamenchisaurus actually has a ton of species. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 species of Mamenchisaurus as of December 13th, 2025. And the most recent one was described just a week ago. But yeah, these are Jurassic sauropods from China. Super fascinating, super freakishly long necks for some reason. But yeah. Talk about Bepiosaurus. Now, Bepi is interesting because it recently got really popular because of the Isle, right? It's in the Isle. However, what a lot of people don't know is that it's not... Okay, so you remember how I said Eutyrannus is a Tyrannosauroid, but it's not a member of the Tyrannosauridae? Bepi is like that, but for the Therizinosaurs. Bepi is a member of the Therizinosauridae family, or superfamily, but it is not part of the Therizinosauridae family. So it is not seen as a true member of the family. In fact, I don't think it's currently listed with any family specifically. But it is super weird. Either way, it lived in the early Cretaceous about 130, 120 million years ago. And was it found in the... Oh, wow. Okay, so here's something really interesting. It's found in the same formation as Eutyrannus. So what an interesting, like, convergence of that conversation. Yeah, very interesting. It's in the same formation as Euty. That's awesome. That's super cool. What I actually wanted to talk about a second ago with the sauropod thing, I've noticed there are some people who have been reconstructing sauropods without lips recently. You know how, like, there's been the big craze of putting lips on, like, theropods, like T-Rex and stuff like that within the last few years? Well, that's backed up by, like, science. There are, like, parts of the skulls that show that there were probably, like, blood vessels and veins that went to, like, some soft tissue structure, and, like, the wear of their teeth was, like, very clearly, like, not that of, like, an animal that would have its teeth exposed to the open air. But there was someone I remember reading their opinion on that said that sauropods, like sauropods replace their teeth on an almost, like, daily basis. And if you have, and, like, they would wear their teeth down because of the types of, like, things they were eating, and it would, like, wear down the enamel, so they had to replace them, like, really fast, then there probably wouldn't have, like, been a pressure to have lips. Don't take my word for that. That's just, like, some opinion that I heard within the sphere. But it's a super interesting idea, and I really like it. So if you ever see lipless sauropods, you know why. Yeah. Would Styracosaurus sound like Loki Ceratops from Jurassic World Evolution 3 if it was alive today? Sure, probably. I think so. Talk about Stegosaurus. Stegosaurus. Give me 1 second. Stegosaurus. Let me... Oh! It's a Pachycephalosaurid! Yeah! Oh, man, I always love seeing Pachycephalosaurids because they don't get enough representation in media, especially since I didn't even know about this guy, so it's really cool to learn about him. Late Cretaceous, 77 to 74 million years ago. Lived in what is now Alberta, Canada. Oh, that is super cool. I love that. That's super neat. Love to see that. So this guy probably would have been in and around the same places as like Albertosaurus and stuff like that. That's really fascinating. Huh. Yeah, and it's got a little dome head too. I love that, like, if okay, so this is gonna, like, talking about the Pachycephalosauridae as a whole here. Um I'm looking forward to, and I'm gonna make sure that you guys know that this is something to look forward to. Stygimoloch and Dracorex are probably going to be talked about within the next couple of years. Because a few weeks ago, once again, we had another Nanotyrannus paper that confirmed that the Nanotyrannus skull, or the specimen that was described as Nanotyrannus originally in the 1980s, that one has just been confirmed to be an adult. Which is wild, because not only did people look at that specimen and be like, it is not fully grown, this is not its own thing, it's a juvenile T-Rex. Not only did people look at that, but after Nanotyrannus became valid, people were still like, yes, this is a Nanotyrannus, but it is not an adult. This specimen was probably like still growing and getting bigger. However, they just confirmed that it is an adult, and they had to basically invent a whole new way of gauging how old specimens are when they pass. And because this method exists now, we're probably about to find out whether or not Dracorex and Stygimoloch are actually their own unique genera and not Pachycephalosaurids. No, sorry, not synonymous with Pachycephalosaurus. Sorry, not Pachycephalosaurus. I didn't mean to say Pachycephalosaurus. So that's super cool, super fascinating. Stygimoloch already has a lot going for it. It's found in older sediment, but it is likely, like, even if it is its own thing, it could be seen as synonymous with the genus Pachycephalosaurus, but like as a different species. Dracorex, fingers crossed that thing's valid, that thing's rad, got a cool name, love it, but we will see. Metriacanthosaurus next. Metriacanthosaurus is kind of weird. So as of right now, I do believe, so background information, Metriacanthosaurus is a theropod from the Jurassic of what is now Asia. And the Metriacanthosaurids in general are super strange because you don't have a whole lot of them. There's Metriacanthosaurus that we know of. There's Yangchuanosaurus. And then there's one that starts with an A that I, for the life of me, cannot pronounce. It was described not too long ago. The reason I remember that getting described was because that was the paper that had the phylogenetic graph that showed Monolophosaurus in the Spino family. For some reason, I know why they did it. It was it's some strange reasoning and some weird workarounds, but either way. Metriacanthosaurids are kind of anomalous because we're not exactly 100% sure where they come from. The current idea is that they are allosauroids. They originate from like as an offshoot of the allosaurid relatives and stuff like that. But they're very, I would say aesthetically, they're very cool because they have crests on their heads that are unlike that of like any other theropod. Their crests extend like from their lacrum all the way down to their snouts, and you can really see that with Yangchuanosaurus. Very fascinating animals, but unfortunately, I do believe the Metriacanthosaurids quickly go extinct after the Jurassic comes to an end, if not before or slightly after that. Of course, you always do have the ideas that you have a few ghost lineages that continue on a bit further, or maybe they died out a bit sooner. But yeah, otherwise, I think Metries are just, in general, very strange, but, I wish we knew more about them. As is with everything. Talk about Majungasuchus. Majungasuchus. I have heard that name, and at first glance, I thought you said Majungatholus. Give me 1 second. Majungasuchus. Michigan is a genetic... Oh. That's not. That's is that a hybrid animal from Jurassic? I'm only getting the Jurassic World alive animal. I'm sorry. I don't. Hold on. Maybe there's supposed to be a G there. No. Oh, here we go. Mahajunga Okay, interesting. Crocodiliform. From late Cretaceous period of Madagascar. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, so it is from Madagascar, much like Majungasaurus itself. It is crocodiliform. Specifically, it is a Notosuchian. Very interesting. From the Meskhetian predator, reaching up to 4 meters or 13 feet in length. Very interesting. I love learning about new animals. This is so cool. That's really fascinating. I gotta look more into this afterwards, but that's super cool. Awesome, man. I've played Ecos Labrea on Roblox. I have not. I have played Prior Extinction on Roblox, which I think was also a super cool game. But yeah. Amargasaurus. Amargasaurus is really interesting. I saw someone today talking about it on I think it was on Twitter. There's always been the debate on Amargasaurus potentially having skin flaps covering those giant neural spines that come off of the neck. And I think a few years ago they proved that Amargasaurus had these giant sails instead of like the neural spines poking out of the neck. I also think its close cousin, Bahatosaurus, is also really interesting. Bahatosaurus's neural spines point a different direction. But both animals just super fascinating, such strange looking animals. Just kind of like an example of how weird certain animals can get and how alien they can look from like a more traditional look at like the rest of their families and stuff like that. Very strange, very fascinating animals. Hello, Maze. How you doing? Speaking of Metri, what dinosaurs actually had venom or poisons? I can't speak. I'm not an ornithologist, so I can't speak on any modern birds or modern dinosaurs, right? So if there's a modern bird that is venomous or poisonous, I don't know about it, but I won't say that that isn't something that exists because I'm just unsure. But I can say that there is no, like, non-avian dinosaur that has been discovered that has evidence of venom or poison. Now, I will say that, firstly, venom is when it bites you and you die. Poison is when you bite it and you die. So there's a lot of different things in the past that have been like, oh, this could be evidence for venom. One of those things was that there is like channels in certain, like channels etched into teeth of certain animals. Unfortunately, that's not really evidence of anything, as sometimes those things just appear to make the teeth weigh less, right? You see that same kind of thing happen with claws. If you've ever seen a raptor claw, you ever notice how there's that groove down the middle? You ever wondered why that's there? It's there so it can weigh less without losing any structural integrity. So it's the same kind of idea. So unfortunately, there are no known dinosaurs that are venomous or poisonous, unless there is a bird living today that I am unaware of. So you can look into that for yourselves. If there is, that's super awesome and fascinating. But if there isn't, then kind of repeating the same pattern. But yeah. Udanoceratops facts. This guy I haven't looked into as much, but I really should have, because these guys are super strange. So these guys are part of a group of the ceratopsid. Once again, we're getting into they're part of a family called the Leptoceratopsidae. which is kind of an offshoot of the ceratopsids. Now, they're not true ceratopsians because they are leptoceratopsians and they branched out much earlier before the large-bodied ceratopsians showed up. They're known for having a really stubby face. They've got a very strange face. And they are from the Campanian, so the late Cretaceous. The reason I say I should have looked into these guys earlier is that I do believe the Primordial Tyrants, the modding group for Path of Titans, is making a Udanoceratops mod for the game, and I feel like I should have looked more into that when that got announced because I genuinely didn't know about the animal. But just a super weird, stubby little leptoceratopsian, known mostly from skull material and vertebrae. So yeah, very cool. Fun facts about Carcharodontosaurus. Carcharodontosaurus, unfortunately, earlier this year lost some of its skeletal material because it was redescribed to a new genus of Carcharodontosaurid, that being Temeriraptor. This was something I didn't get to put in my my 2025 Paleowrapped, unfortunately. Just because I already had like a ton of stuff that was going into the Paleowrapped. And if I had made it any longer, most of the platforms that I had posted it on would have pitched a fit. But other than that, Carcharodontosaurus, probably one of the older depictions of Carcha, shows it having a very pointed snout. That is not the case. If anything, Carcharodontosaurus looks a little something like this. It's still got a bit of a point to its snout, but you can notice that it's a lot more blunt than it used to be. This is more in line with other Carcharodontosaurids. Unfortunately, Carcharodontosaurus itself, much like Spinosaurus, doesn't have a lot of great fossil material. So, again, phylogenetic bracketing, all that good stuff. So, yeah. Why is there no dinosaur fossils in Ukraine? Serve favorite hadrosaur? Because by the time of the late Cretaceous, most of Europe was an archipelago. It was just a giant chain of islands. Of course, like you have fossils from the Jurassic before a lot of that like went underwater during the Cretaceous. But like anything that was in and around that area probably got swept away when it went underwater. It's just kind of unfortunate. Because like when you think about it, in order for fossils to preserve, they have to not only fossilize, but they also have to survive the next few 100 million years in some cases, just so that we can find them, right? So in the late Cretaceous, there was probably like thousands of Jurassic era fossils that did not make it to the modern day because of how much more time they spent like in the ground and then got exposed and then got eroded away. And that's just the tragedy of it. Talk about Ajnabaya. Ajnabaya. I've seen that name and I feel like I've talked about it, but the name has never stuck with me. Ajnabaya. A small... Wait, hold on. Is this the... It was Moroccan. It is a small Moroccan hadrosaur. Okay, cool. I looked at this thing at first and I was like, is this one of the hadrosaurs that was on Hatzeg Island? It's not. It's just small. But yeah, it seems to be a late Cretaceous hadrosaur from Morocco. It is late Cretaceous, right? Yes, it is late Cretaceous. That's really cool. From the Meskhetian. Very interesting. What does the name mean? The name means stranger or foreigner. It is a genus of Lambeosaurian hadrosaur. Very cool. Lambeosaurians and stuff like that. That's awesome. And it just makes me remember that one paper talking about the Edmontosaurus crests and how there's probably like skin and flesh on it. They had a diagram with Lambeosaurus on there, and man, that thing was cursed. I know that I'm going to have to accept that that's kind of probably what most hadrosaurs looked like now, but man, for the next few weeks at least, it's gonna feel cursed. It's gonna feel really cursed. But yeah. Is it me only, or do you also call it Karkar sometimes? I call it Karka. I just say Karka. Of course, you can say Karkar, but whenever I hear people say Karkar out loud, I'm like, Karkar go vroom. Karkar go vroom. So yeah. Do. You have autism? No. How could you tell? Is my certificate on the wall? It's somewhere, I'm sure. Talk about Acrovenator. Acrovenator. Now that's a name I haven't heard before. Hold on. Acrovenator. What are you? Is this an Abelosaurid? A Belosaurid family that lived in Europe, modern-day France and Spain during the late Cretaceous 72 to 76 million years ago during the Campanian. Very interesting. So it's an Abelisaur from Europe. Very interesting. What is it known from? Oh, it's known from a brain case. Huh. That's really odd. A dinosaur that's like only really known from a brain case? That's really fascinating, though. Huh. I'm going to have to look more into this. It was described in 2014. It's known from a brain case. If that's all they have of it, I'm very curious to know how they figured out it was an Abelisaur. Very interesting. That's very I love learning about new stuff like that. So, like anytime someone says like a name that I haven't seen before or haven't heard of, it's always really fascinating because I get to look at it live here with you guys and react to it, and it's super cool. Ichthyovenator. Ichthyovenator is really cool, and it is a Spinosaurid from Laos. It is I want to say it is the smallest Spinosaurid that we have on record as of right now. Unfortunately, like most other Spinosaurids, it is known from very little material. And that is probably the forever tragedy of the Spinosaurid family, just because of the types of places that they lived. I would reckon that much like Irritator, Ichthyovenator probably had a laterally splitting jaw. And in fact, let me, where is my Ichthy? There is my Ichthy. Whoop. There we go. I've got an Ichthyovenator avatar, and when it opens its mouth, you can see that it's... Oh, okay, hold on. I need to get smaller. When it opens its mouth, you can see it splitting open, and I think that's really cool. So yeah, very interesting little Spinosaurids. But yeah. Smallest Spinosaurid is either I don't think Irritator is the smallest. I want to say Ichthy is the smallest. Then again, Irritator and Ichthy are usually reconstructed very similarly. I'll double check though. Oh, okay, so it might be Irritator. Huh. 20 to 26 feet long. I'm going to have to relook at Ichthy's description then. Because I remember it being smaller than that. Ichthyovenator. It's found in Laos. I really want to... Where's the description? Oh, no, it is bigger by just a few feet. The smallest reconstructions put it about 28 feet long. Okay, so it's by a few feet. But yeah, they're still really small. The California tapir. California tapir. I'm gonna have to look that one up. California tapir. Oh, these are weird. Tapirus californicus. Extinct species of tapir. Around 13,000 years ago. Dang, no! Man, see, this is like when I look up like prehistoric mammals like that, and they're like, oh yeah, this died out like 12,000, 13,000, 7,000 years ago. It's always immediately followed by like, oh man, that really sucks, because like there's that intrinsic knowledge of like, oh, we did that. Oh, that was probably us. Oh, that was probably humans that it killed it. So it's always like one of those moments where you're just really sad. But very cool. I love to see that. Um, who's the guy who made the sick Dino Class drawings? Oh, that was my friend Pug. She's really good. I've never seen her draw like that, but she was really good, and I really appreciated her doing that. But yeah, um, do. What if Prestosuchus made an appearance in Jurassic World Evolution 3? Hey, that'd be really cool. I'd love to see that. Do Iguanodon. Iguanodon's really interesting because it's one of the older known dinosaurs, right? And it's had a lot of different reconstructions in the past. What I did find really interesting is that I had there was a comment left on my video about Iguanodon that I was by I think Let's Build a Dinosaur. If you don't follow Let's Build a Dinosaur, you should go and do that right now. They make great content. And they mentioned to me something that I didn't know, and that's that the original specimen of Iguanodon, I think, got redescribed to a different genus. But I think by that point, Iguanodon had a neotype, or at least one was identified for it, so Iguanodon got to keep the name and all that stuff. Another thing, and I might be slightly off on the details there because I didn't like look too much into that afterwards. So someone, you guys can correct me live here or now, or hey, YouTube comments. YouTube comments will always get me corrected, of course. But another thing is that obviously one of the more famous things about Iguanodon is that it's got this. It's got these big old like thumbs, right? And of course, like when we first found it, we're like, huh, those are really strange nose spikes. So we were like putting the spike of Iguanodon on the nose. And I will say this. I met someone like months ago, maybe a good half a year ago by this point. Someone came into my chat and told me that the Iguanodon having the spike on the nose was more accurate. And I literally, they were adamant on this for an hour and would not, they weren't rage baiting either, which was wild. I didn't know people like that still existed. It's nuts. But yeah. Okay, and TikTok thinks I'm AFK. But yeah. Simotyrannus is cool. Simotyrannus, I don't know too much about it. I think what did they end up describing that thing as? Because I remember it was like Simotyrannus. I remember it was like out in the Did they ever give it? Oh yeah, it's a Metriacanthosaurid. Oh, cool, awesome. So yeah, Oh no, it's fragmentary like all other Metriacanthosaurids. But cool, it's apparent. Okay, so its status as a Metriacanthosaurid isn't set in stone, but some believe it to be a Metriacanthosaurid. But either way, still really interesting. I think like most of it's like vertebrae. Early Cretaceous of Sao. Oh, it's from Thailand. Oh, how fascinating. Very cool. But yeah. Talking about Denversaurus. Denversaurus doesn't get talked about enough, in my opinion. It's one of those lesser known dinosaurs from the Hell Creek formation. Because, like, when you talk about Hell Creek, it's always T-Rex, Triceratops, Edmontosaurus, and Kylosaurus, and maybe you'll talk about Pachycephalosaurus. Maybe you'll get to Struthiomimus and stuff like that. But Denversaurus was also in and around Hell Creek. It was like almost as big as Ankylosaurus. Now, Denversaurus, I want to say, is a nodosaur, so it lacks the big club tail of Ankylosaurus and instead has like the shoulder spike. I don't think it actually had the giant shoulder spikes like, Sauropelta did, but it still had more prominent like osteoderms and spikes along its sides and stuff like that. But otherwise, I think it doesn't get talked about enough, and I think that's a real shame because I think nodosaurs deserve a lot more credit because might be a hot take. I think nodosaur armor plating is a lot cooler than Ankylosaur armor plating. A hot take, maybe, but I think the nodosaurs had it done better. I think they did it best. But yeah. What's my opinion on Eulatitan? Oh God. Okay, so Eulatitan is an interesting idea but I have two reservations about it. It's A, it is described from material that was previously assigned to Alamosaurus. Now, I'm not against recognizing new genuses from material that was previously described to other genera. However, that in combination with who exactly is doing this makes me doubtful. If you didn't know, the paleontologist who's kind of like come out with the idea of Eulatitan is Greg Paul. Now, if you don't know Greg Paul, let's get to know Greg Paul. Greg Paul is known for one thing majorly. Now, he's done a remarkable amount of good work in the field of paleontology, but I will tell you this. One of the things that a lot of people will talk about when they talk about Greg Paul is the fact that he is hallucinating two species of Tyrannosaurus. Greg Paul is very, very adamant that T-Rex is actually three different species, that it's T-Rex, T. regina, and T. imperator, right? Here's the thing. The morphological differences that he is describing have no correlation with time or placement. And it's kind of the consensus with most people that he is basically hallucinating those. So with the fact that he's trying to break something off from Alamosaurus, and it was also previously described material from Alamosaurus, makes me very suspicious. So we will see. Brachiosaurus will come to Path of Titans as a mod. I did see that, yeah. Talk about Giga and T-Rex. The Giga and T-Rex get talked about all the time. They're very different animals, lived at very different times. There's a good 30 million years that separates them. Giga lived at the beginning of the early Cretaceous, or sorry, not the beginning of the late Cretaceous and the end of the early Cretaceous around the Cenomanian. T-Rex lived in the Maastrichtian 66 million years ago, North America. They're separated by continents as well. Which kind of just, another reason that the Dominion prologue makes no sense whatsoever. But very different. They're adapted for different hunting styles. Giga has flat teeth, whereas T-Rex has rounded teeth. Giga has a lot more openings in its skull. Or, sorry, maybe not a lot more openings, but the openings in its skull are bigger than the openings in T-Rex's skull. That's mostly because Giga was built for cutting, T-Rex was built for crushing and stuff like that. Also, hey, I'm going to put this to bed right now. You can say Giganotosaurus. That's a completely valid way to say it. Giganotosaurus and Giganotosaurus are completely valid because it was the person who described it called it Giganotosaurus, because that's how you would say it in Spanish, and then you can call it Giganotosaurus because that's how we typically say it in English. So either way is fine. I'll sometimes call it Giganotosaurus, but I mostly stick with Giganotosaurus for the most part. So yeah. But yeah. Talk about Bahraineosaurus. This is one that I keep recognizing the name of, but I never remember for some reason. Bahraineosaurus. Is this another one of those indeterminate theropods? Yeah, enigmatic theropods. Yeah. It's kind of described as, it's another one of those theropods that's not known from much. It's possibly synonymous with Deltadromeus. So that's interesting to me. But yeah. Talk about Mipe. Mipe's really interesting. So unfortunately Mipe's very fragmentary. I think most of what we have of Mipe is vertebrae, ribs, and that's about it. The rib bone that we have is kind of the reason it's given the species name that it was given, which is macrothorax, which basically means big chest. And from the few rib bones, or maybe even the one rib bone that we have, it's very evident that it's got this giant barrel chest. Now, Mipe is usually reconstructed using the remains of other megaraptorids. Again, phylogenetic bracketing, fill in the blanks. of one specimen using the relatives of other specimens. And unfortunately, when it comes to Megaraptorids, we don't have a whole lot of great material to begin with. I mean, we got their basic body shape. We know kind of what they look like, but a lot of like the skulls of Megaraptors that you see in certain reconstructions are based off of one specimen, I think, that was probably not fully grown. So if we ever find Mipe's head or just the head of any Megaraptor, our view of them could completely change. And Megaraptors are already super strange because we're not exactly sure where they fit in when it comes to their placement among the theropods. So they're probably Coelurosaurs, maybe they're Carcharodontosaurs, maybe Allosauroids. It's really hard to say as of right now. So, yeah. I think we'll do one more. Do Afrotapejara. Is that? I'm expecting to see this thing, and it's just got this giant afro. Afrotapejara. Ooh, okay. So this allows me to bring up another topic about tapaharids in general. So it is a part of the family of the Tapejaridae. What's interesting about that, and here's something that most people don't know, is that the tapaharids are in like the same clade as the Asdarchids. They are kind of like in the same way that, you know, Eutyrannus is not a tyrannosaur, but it's a tyrannosauroid, right? They're kind of the same way. What's also interesting about tapaharids in general is that there is evidence of them eating fruit. So these were possibly herbivorous, like pterosaurs. Now, Afrotapejara appears to have been described in 2020. It's not known from like incredible fossil material, but it was around the Kim beds, which is interesting because it's dated to the Cenomanian. And if it's in the Kim beds during the Cenomanian, then it's around the same time as Spinosaurus being there, which is really interesting. So this is another animal that probably could have seen Spinosaurus, which is really fascinating. Unfortunately, the Cenomanian is marked by an extreme change in global climate, which is probably what brought about the extinction of a lot of animals on the planet at the time. Climate extinctions like that typically aren't on the same level as other major like extinction events. They don't typically have the same like huge ramifications that like say the KT extinction or the Great Dying Extinction had. But they happen every few million years or so. But yeah, very interesting. Talk about Thalassodromeus. Thalassodromeus is or in and around, like the same thing. It's a tapaharid, I want to say, unless it's been. Does it have its own family? Because I feel like I've heard people say that Thalassodromeus is in like its own thing, isn't it? Again, it's a pterosaur, so it does have its own thing, the Thalassodromidae. Interesting, very interesting. Okay, so this guy was in and around the Albanian 110 million years ago. So a little earlier than Afrotapejara. So yeah, this guy's really Thalassodromeus itself is really interesting. They butchered it in Pathotitans. I just want to say that now. They butchered Thalassodromeus in Pathotitans. That thing should not be in the ecological niche they put it in, and it should be a terrestrial predator of things like Deinonychus and like Latinivenatrix and smaller herbivores. They really should be. It should be a specialist for that, but they didn't, and I really hope it gets a TLC soon. Anyway, unfortunately, we have been going for about as long as I typically keep these classes going, so we will be bringing class to an end right about now. If there were any questions that you guys asked that I missed, for first and foremost, I do apologize. But you can go to the comment section of my most recent video, or you can join the community, the community Discord server, link in my bio, and you can ask me questions in the Lakota Questions channel. I'll get to you as soon as I can after stream. If you came in late, these streams will be uploaded to YouTube at Lakota406 over on YouTube. Thank you, everyone who stuck with us for the entire stream. Thank you, everyone who liked, commented, shared, followed, and all that good stuff. And a very special thank you to everyone who gifted. You guys are awesome. You're amazing. Thank you so very much. And I love y'all. With all of that said and done, I will catch you guys later. And yeah, y'all have a good rest of y'all's weekend and a good week next one. So I'll catch y'all later. Bye-bye.